Hello, I'm Brian Canfield, and today we're going to further unravel the mysteries of stained glass. I'd like to talk about the finished step in the process of making a stained glass window, and that is cementing it or puttying it. That is adding putty inside of the lead channel. That way you weatherproof the window, and also you're going to make it a little more structurally sound once that putty solidifies. Now, to do this process, you're going to need a few things, and the most important, of course, is the putty. You can go and buy some store-bought putty. Typically, stained glass stores will have it. There's quite a few brands out there. I'll let you figure out what maybe you like and what's going to work for you. Me personally, I like to make my own putty. There's a lot of formulas out there, but here are the basic ingredients for stained glass putty. You're going to typically use 3 parts lime, 1 part finishing cement. Also, you're going to use 1 part plaster of Paris. Now you start to combine these, and I use a mixer. Some people also use like the paint mixers. Those work pretty well. You have to have a nice stiff mixer bit on that. Once you start mixing the ingredients, you start to add boiled linseed oil. Now that's, you gotta add it a little bit and kind of keep an eye on it, and you don't want to make it too soupy by adding a ton of oil. You just add a little bit, let it mix up, add a little bit more, and as time goes on, you're looking for this consistency where you have a nice malleable putty. It's somewhat tacky, but not too soupy where it's going to run through and bleed through the other side of the leaded window. As time goes on, your putty might last maybe 3 weeks as a usable resource, and then you're going to have to make a new batch. Some of that store-bought putty lasts a little bit longer. Once you have your putty made, some people like it a little darker. Me personally, I like a dark gray putty, and to get that color, you need to add a little bit of cement, additive coloring agent. This is black. And you just add a little bit, mix it up, and add more until you get that nice color that you want. Some other really important tools in this process is once you start adding the putty, you're going to have to brush it out. This is a stiff bristle brush. This is a first stage brush that you would use in this process. Also, you're going to need a finishing brush. Notice there's a lot more hairs on this brush. This is something that you would use towards the end to kind of polish out the stained glass piece once puttied. Also, you're going to need some sort of pick to detail the glass and get rid of some of that excess putty. Me, I personally like the dental pick. I can go to my dentist. They usually have extra ones, some that they throw away. And I asked them if I can have some of those picks, and you know what? You file down the end a little bit so it's not as sharp, and these make perfect picks for stained glass putty work. If you don't have some sort of tool like that, you can kind of make your own or find something that's sharp and pointy, typically a nail head, anything like that you can use as a pick. Also, you want to use a wire brush, because if you start to putty glass that has a lot of texture, surface texture, that putty gets in there, and you can come in with a stiff wire brush and kind of work out that putty from some of those, kind of like the ripple glass or the glue chip. Those are terrible for puttying, and you really need to work it with the wire brush to clean those. Also, you're going to use some sort of file or maybe a lead dike, and that's when you use your hand to feel some of those solder joints, and as you know, sometimes when you take away that soldering iron, the solder will follow the iron as you lift it, and it creates these incredibly sharp points of solder that are really dangerous. And as you're rubbing your hand puttying the stained glass window, it can really cut you. So you want to go through before you putty and try to find some of those points, maybe clip them off, file them down a little bit. That's for safety. Also, you're going to need something to protect your clothing, because this is a dirty business. I like to use a denim apron. In addition, you're going to need some sort of small particle mask that's going to keep you from inhaling some of the lime in this particular process as well. You don't want to inhale that lime, so you want to wear a mask. And lastly, you're going to use some sort of finishing wax, and this would be at the very end. You put this on here on the stained glass piece to put like a waxy film. That way it's a little easier to clean. And if you're working with painted stained glass, it also fills in some of that painted porous vitreous paint on the glass, and again, it just makes it a little easier to maintain and clean over time. So let's go ahead and move over to a finished stained glass piece. At least it's been fabricated. It's also been soldered. And once you have this piece made, now you're ready to putty. Now what I'm going to look to do is systematically work through this piece, start in a corner, work my way around each individual piece of glass, and methodically work my way through the entire stained glass piece, filling in every channel. Now when I say a channel, remember you have the H channel that the glass goes in, and what you're trying to do is fill in that channel with the putty. That's the whole point. So you're going to do this side first, flip it over, and do the other side. So the action that you want to do is with the putty is get your fingers, use your thumb or your fingers, and you kind of want to push and roll the putty into that channel. Some people, for bigger pieces, you can use nylon brushes to do this action. Smaller pieces, I like to do it by hand. Now, I'm just going to work in this small area just to demonstrate how to do this. So here I'm going to work on these nice fish lips. And by the way, this is a piece that one of my students made, and she allowed me to use it for this demonstration, and her name is Andrea Livingston. You may recognize that name. She was a gold medal winner in the Olympics of 1984 in windsurfing. So this piece here, we have quarter round lead. We have a thinner lead here. It's about an 1/8 inch round lead. Doesn't matter what size, it all needs to be puttied. So here I have a little bit, and you can see I'm just kind of pushing it into that channel. And I'm going to work my way around each individual piece of glass, pushing it into that channel. Notice all the excess putty that is still on the glass. We're going to come through and clean that up a little bit later. This is quite a tedious process, and again, you have to be methodical about it because you don't want to miss any channels with the putty, because if you miss a channel, well, pretty much that translates into having a leaky window, and you definitely don't want that. Now notice on this part of the glass, this is kind of a light ripple glass. It's pretty texturous on this side, and you can see where the putty is starting to kind of catch in some of those grooves. We'll address that a little bit later on how to clean that up. So now I have these two pieces nice and puttied, and now I'm going to come in with my pick and go around the perimeter of each piece of glass. Now why is this important? Well, that whole idea of the daylight. You want this shape illuminated, and if you don't pick out this particular perimeter and get rid of all this excess putty, you're going to kind of mess up that intended shape that you want to exhibit. And so I use the putty I have in hand just to kind of roll it, pick up some of that bigger putty debris, put that to the side. Then I'm going to move on and grab a little rag that I use. This is just to put a little bit of a dry lime, and this is going to hasten the process of the putty drying. Now most putties typically will take about 3 weeks in order for it to cure properly, but putting this dry lime on here immediately starts to hasten the drying process, and it also cleans any of the oils or flux that you may have left over on your piece. Now once I have that lime on there, I'm going to come in with my first stage brush. This is that rough bristle brush that I showed you earlier. And I'm just going to kind of go in there and start rubbing around. Notice I'm kind of doing a circular motion, clockwise, counterclockwise. That way I'm addressing every bit of the channel, and notice it's starting to clean it. Matter of fact, you can even hopefully see that it's getting a little shinier because we are cleaning all those oils and any kind of residue off. Once I have that first stage brush done, I come in with my second stage brush. Now this is the polishing brush. This is just kind of like shining your shoes. You're going to come in side to side, and notice as I start to brush that particular area where the putty is, immediately it will start to darken the lead and the solder. The more black cement color additive you have in the putty, the darker it's probably going to get, and the more you brush it, the darker it's going to get. Now, a good classic finish to a stained glass piece is somewhat of a dark gray. Some people like it black even. Notice over time, any windows that you've seen, they're going to actually patina and darken over time naturally as they oxidize. Me personally, I like kind of a medium dark gray finish. I kind of like it also where you can see the difference between the solder and the lead, because you're kind of exhibiting your craftsmanship and showing off, some of those techniques that you're employing on your window. Once you have it brushed out, and notice I just did this small area. You need to do this entire side, flip it over and do the other side as well. But in that small area, once you have it completely brushed out, then you're going to add just a little bit of wax. Doesn't take much. And this is kind of like the wax you would put on your car. You kind of rub it in. You're going to let it dry. Now before you do put the wax on, you may want to inspect some of that textured glass, and you can get in there with your wire brush and clean up some of the putty out of the texture. Once that wax dries, then you're going to come back and you're going to brush it out again, and it's going to get nice and shiny. And you're going to let it rest for maybe like a day, and then you're going to come back again, check all those channels to make sure you got any of the putty debris, because it will expand a little bit. You're going to clean some of that out, put a little bit more wax on there, brush it out again, and it's ready to install. Now this is the last stage of a stained glass piece. It's very important, and this again weatherproofs it and also gives it a little more rigidity in the structure. I hope you enjoyed the finished piece that you've made and you've watched me make, and I hope to see you again.